Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. So today we have Indiana's own Starlight Distillery. So Huber's Orchard and Winery began farming back in 1843 when their ancestors settled in Starlight, Indiana from Germany. Growing primarily fruit, their farm began to diversify in 1978 when they opened their doors to their first winery. Today the company has almost 600 acres of farmland which grows mainly fruits, vegetables, Christmas trees, pumpkins, and grapes. And not to mention some rye and bourbon. So guys, I'm really excited to get into these, so let's get on with the show. Hello everyone and welcome back. So here in front of me I have the single barrel Old Rickhouse rye whiskey. Now this one comes in at 114.2 proof. It's aged for a minimum of 4 years. And the mash bill on this one is 85% rye and 15% malted barley. So let's go ahead and take a look at this guy here. Very nice, deep, dark honey color on this one. For being a minimum of 4 years, it's actually a beautiful color to it. Sticks to the glass very well. Seems like it's pretty viscous. Let's go ahead and get into the nose. So first thing is just a big rush of rye spice. Kind of dominates the nose at first. Slight floral note a little bit further into the glass. Definitely some spearmint in there, no doubt. Nice like sweet vanilla in there too, a little bit further in. So some of that floral and some sweet vanilla a little bit further into the glass. A little bit further away from the glass, you're picking up some of those big, bold rye spices, as well as some of that spearmint. Beautiful nose. A little bit of caramel at play there too. But again, those big rye spices and the spearmint are kind of overtaking those traditional vanilla caramel notes. Let's get into the palate, guys. Cheers. So honestly, this one doesn't drink like it's 114 proof. More along the lines of maybe 100, 105 proof, maybe somewhere right around there. Goes down very easy, very silky on the finish. Front of the palate, get a little bit of that mint that I got on the nose. Kind of plays a little bit on the front of the palate there. Again, very silky finish towards the back. Some nice vanilla notes there on the middle of the palate. Let's go for a second sip. Okay, so again, nice, again, that vanilla note kind of staying right there on the middle of the palate, as well as some like some mild citrus. Not getting a ton of citrus on this one. Lots of cinnamon on the front of the palate, though, kind of tingling the front of the tongue. The finish, though, is where I'm starting to get a little bit more of that mint that I was getting. So that vanilla and citrus on the middle, that cinnamon on the front, some of that spearmint, and a little bit of that vanilla trickling into the back there. Yeah, still very silky. It coats the palate very well. It's not like super viscous, but it doesn't dry you out either. The finish is actually kind of long. It actually reminds me of one of like the Bit O' Honey candies. Very sweet. You get some honey on there on the front with that cinnamon. The middle of the palate brings along that citrus and vanilla. That vanilla kind of flows through into the back with that spearmint. But that like on that finish though, I get like that Bit O' Honey candy there. Really good. Let's get to the last sip. Yeah, again, that cinnamon just attacks the front of that tongue. And again, right into the middle, there, getting those vanilla, a little bit of citrus notes. Again, nothing really crazy. It's not bursting with citrus like a lot of ryes do. This is more along the lines of a of a traditional rye, just kicked up a little bit more bolder flavors than a traditional rye, more silky than a traditional rye. And that bit of honey is not something I get a lot on ryes either. All in all, a very good, again, silky. Um, the flavors definitely play on the tongue very well. Again, I'm picking up a lot, especially being a minimum of 4 years. Again, cinnamons, the vanillas, that spearmint kind of going into the finish with the vanilla and that bit of honey finish. All in all, it's actually a fantastic rye whiskey from Starlight. All right, guys, so here in front of me, I have the single barrel bourbon finished in port barrels for 8 months. Now, this one comes in at 97 proof, and this one uses 2 separate mash bills. So this one consists of a 3-grain, which is 60% corn, 20% rye, and 20% malt. The second mash bill is a 4-grain, which is 51% corn, 20% rye, 20% malt, and 9% wheat. So let's go ahead and look at the color on this guy. Definitely a mahogany. Very, very dark copper. Definitely a reddish hue to it, though. More along the lines of like a mahogany. Really nice color. Sticks to the glass pretty well for 97 proof. Let's get into the nose. Definitely getting some darker fruits in there. Some raisin, a little bit further into the glass. Some cinnamon, some allspice. Maybe a little bit of nutmeg in there. Definitely kind of spicy, spicy on the nose. Dark fruits are definitely playing in there as well, though. Definitely like a dark cherry further into the glass as well. Lighter notes like on a little bit further away from the glass. You're getting some of those typical, like the bourbon notes still come out in it, the vanilla and the caramel. Further in, you get those spices and the dark fruits. The port barrels definitely play a big influence in that. All right, guys, let's get into the palate. Cheers. Again, sits on the palate very well. Not super viscous, but again, not super dry like the rye. Still has that coating that it leaves. Short to medium finish. Dark fruits definitely playing a major part on that center of the palate. Front of the palate, again, a lot of those spices that I got on the nose are kind of playing on the front of the palate. Middle of the palate, definitely picking up some plum, some raisin. Finish going through, picking up maybe some of that cinnamon that I was getting on the front of the palate. Definitely get some cinnamon going through there. Dark fruit still kind of lingering on the middle of the palate, not necessarily going through into the finish. Just going for a second sip. So definitely baking spice forward on the front of the palate. Get some nutmeg in there, some cinnamon. Middle of the palate is dominated by the dark fruits, the plum, the raisin, maybe even a little bit of that dark cherry in there going into the finish. It's a very interesting like butterscotch note that is going through into the finish. Never had that on a port finished bourbon before. Yeah, that's definitely some butterscotch there on the finish. Very sweet, very, very sweet port finished bourbon here. Getting the last sip. Yeah. Very consistent with how it sits on the palate. That one actually made my mouth water. Again, baking spices on the front of the palate. That cinnamon, that allspice, maybe a little bit of nutmeg in there. Fruit, dark fruit, heavy, middle of the palate, sides of the palate. Dark fruits, plum, raisin, a little bit of dark cherry. I think some of that cherry follows through into the finish along with that butterscotch. It still leaves your mouth kind of oily. Again, the finish is a short to medium finish. It goes away a little bit quicker than I wanted it to. Still very, very good. Still wanting me to go back for more. Overall, though, fantastic for a port finish bourbon. All right, guys. So here in front of me, I have the single barrel bourbon finished in Spanish Oloroso sherry barrels for 8 months. Now, this one comes in at 111.4 proof and uses that same split mash bill, the 3 grain, which is 60% corn, 20% rye, and 20% malted barley, and the 4 grain, which is 51% corn, 20% rye, 20% malt, and 9% wheat. So let's go ahead and look at the color on this one. I mean, I can tell you just from what you can see and what I can see, this one is as dark as coffee. It coats the glass extremely, extremely well. Again, this is another one that you can smell just by rolling around the glass. Beautiful dark color to it. You can tell that Oloroso sherry played a big, big influence in the color on this one. Very, very dark, coffee dark. Let's go ahead and get into the nose. Ah. That nose is fantastic. There's dark fruits, brown sugar, cherry. Definitely some cinnamon in there. But what's nice too is like that sherry is not overpowering those bourbon notes that are still coming out in it. And I had each one of these sit out for at least 10 minutes too, to open up a little bit, little bit of air get into them. Those brown sugars and cherries on the nose. It's fantastic nose. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into the palate. Cheers. Ooh, that's good. Oh, wow. So those brown sugars that I got on the nose just cover the entire palate from the front to the back. Definitely, again, some of those darker fruits kind of playing. This time I'm getting them more on the front of the palate, into the middle of the palate. Definitely some darker cherry on this one. Not too much of that, not too like any raisin on this one yet. This one is a little more on the silky side, a little more viscous than the other two were. Yeah, very, very. This one actually has a medium to long finish. Definitely still going down. There's definitely some darker fruit. Some of that brown sugar still mingling in there all across the palate. Let's go for a second sip. Oh, man. So, definitely a brown, brown sugar heavy. Cherry on the front of that palate that's kind of mingling into the middle. The slightest chocolate note there, right on the finish. There's a really little, like a light, like milk chocolate on the finish. Very, very unique finish on this one. The brown sugars, the milk chocolate, some of that cherry on the front of the palate that goes into the middle of the palate. It's definitely, again, some of those darker fruits, some of those plums that are influenced by those sherry barrels. Let's get to the last sip, guys. Cheers. Oh man, this is absolutely delicious. Yeah, again, you want to talk about consistency. Number one, this doesn't drink like it's 111 proof. This drinks like it's 100 proof bourbon. But what's nice about this is like the sweet spot for a finished bourbon. There's times when something is aged for too long in a barrel, and it just dominates those bourbon notes as you get. Sometimes it's not finished for long enough. What they did here is they finished this for the perfect amount of time. This is an absolutely fantastic, fantastic bottle of sherry finished bourbon here. Absolutely fantastic. I think personally it was aged for the perfect amount of time. You are still getting and pulling out, there's definitely still some vanilla and some caramel in there, but those are typical in almost every bourbon. You still get a little bit of oak in there, but those dark fruits and the brown sugars that you're getting there, and that the hint of milk chocolate there onto the finish. This is an absolutely fantastic, fantastic bottle of bourbon here, and an absolutely fantastic lineup from Starlight Distillery. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to send a big thank you to my friends over at Starlight Distillery for supplying me with these 3 bottles to review on the channel. Absolutely fantastic stuff going on over there at Starlight Distillery. And the best part of it is they do not source from anyone. This is all distilled on their own grounds. So if you guys are looking for more reviews like this, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You can also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay dusty.